So we've got the initial build of our project complete, but I stress on that word initial because it's like our first draft. Over the next few videos, we're gonna go over our first draft and start like cleaning things up a little bit, maybe do a little refactoring and just like optimize it, right? Again, just like if you were turning in like a term paper or a book report, like you would proofread it and you would edit it. That's the phase we're in now. And like I said, the next couple of videos are going to be all about optimization and getting this project ready to turn in. You got to send that fateful email that sends them the link to the project so they can assess your code. But before we do that, I want to talk about some larger concepts here. And I want to start off by sharing a tweet by Lori on Tech here that says, so often mid-level engineers write really terse, clever code because they've been told this is what proves they're an expert, that by knowing these pieces of syntax, they're official now. We can go a long way towards removing that bias with a focus on readability. If you've followed me, if you've watched my content, you know readability, ease of use, ease of understand is like my #1 thing. And then she also says here, it becomes, isn't it cool how I know how to use this now? Instead of, I'm comfortable with the knowledge, but I don't have to use it. And then you got a little shout out to Brian here who responded to my my retweet. But the point is here is developers typically go through phases, right? The junior developers write the very simple code because that's really all they know how to do. However, as you become mid-level and you start to learn a little bit, you become dangerous. You start to want to show off your knowledge, right? Look how clever I am. Look at this cool code I wrote. Where oftentimes that clever, terse code is not the most easy to understand or not the most readable. And then as you become more senior, you start to evolve back into, okay, simpler the better. How can I make this more readable? How can I make it so anybody on my team can jump in, figure out my code right away, even if it means it might not be the most dry code, or sometimes I break MVC or whatever architecture you're using. So that is the typical evolution. And again, I thought this tweet was great, wanted to highlight that. And then one more thing to share before we dive in is a great article. It says, goodbye clean code. And it's a story from a very senior developer, a very well-known developer that decided to on his team, he wanted to refactor a big piece of code because there was like a lot of repetitive code. And I'm scrolling down, you can kind of see, it's repetitive. So any developer might be like, oh man, we can refactor that, right? Don't repeat yourself, dry. Well, it says he thought it wasn't clean, right? You see his quote right there. So it talks about how he refactored it. But at the end of the day, like all his whole team was like, no, you just messed all this up. Let's go back. And the moral of the story is, by the way, absolutely read this article. It's great. But he talks about how I see now that my refactoring was a disaster in 2 ways. And he talks about like why he wrote it. Because oftentimes, like here's the thing. Firstly, I didn't talk to the person who wrote it. So oftentimes in code, unless you're dealing with somebody super junior, oftentimes in code, if it's not perfectly dry or doesn't follow MVC, very often that was a educated decision, right? We've talked about this sometimes in this course where I intentionally will break MVC because I feel that makes the code base simpler to understand, right? It's an informed decision. So as we said, you didn't talk to the person who wrote it. And at the end of the day, like the refactor made this code very, very hard to use and expand upon. So again, read the article. It's very, very great. Talking about don't use clean code at all costs. And again, to sum this up, the reason I shared that tweet, the reason I shared this blog post is I think some of you are in that mid-level developer range where, you want to write the terse, clever code, or, you want to be dry at all costs. Don't repeat yourself no matter what, or follow MVC no matter what. And I kind of want to dispel that. And again, that tweet in this article will hopefully help you realize that there's nuance to all this stuff, right? There's no paint by numbers, black and white thing that you have to do every time. Again, there's nuance. All right, so let's dive into our code. Let's start optimizing, start refactoring. And how I go about doing this project is I'm going to literally go through, we might not do it in the video, but I literally went through file by file and looked at like every line of code and was like, okay, how can I make this better? Is this simple, etc. And I like to start, I kind of group them by screen, and I'm just telling you how I do it. I'm sure there's other methods to do this, but I want to let you into my mindset on how I'm going about this. So I'm going to go screen by screen. We're going to do like the search VC. We're going to do the follower list VC. Then we're going to do the favorites VC, and I'm going to kind of group it that way. But first I start off in like the app delegate or scene delegate, because that's like the very beginning. So one thing I noticed here in the scene delegate is we're doing a lot of configuration on our tab bar here, right? This create tab bar function, right? We're using these three functions here to create that tab bar. And for our app, again, just to let you in on the nuance, right? For our app, this very limited app, this is probably fine. However, if you're building a real project, you're probably going to want to get rid of or refactor out all this into like a UITabBar subclass. And that's what we're going to do. Because again, if you're building a very large production app, using the scene delegate where you have to have multi-windows up, remember, like your scene delegate might actually end up having a decent amount of code in it, depending on what you're trying to do. So getting rid of this unnecessary clutter in the scene delegate is very good for like a larger app. Again, just to set the context, it's probably fine for our app, but we're going to refactor it anyway. So we're going to create a subclass of UITabBarController. So if we go to custom views, we'll create a new folder, new group, even though there's only going to be one in here, called Tab Bar Controllers. And again, this is just for the extra organization. Do a command N on that folder, Cocoa Touch class, hit next, and it's going to be of type UITabBarController. Nope, I don't want to name it view controller. We're going to name it GF tab bar controller. Again, just following our prefix pattern here. Create that. Okay, in here, let's delete these comments right away here. And while we're setting this up, let's actually go to our scene delegate and this whole create our search VC stuff, right? We're gonna, well, let's take it all out so we have everything, and then go to our GF tab bar controller. We're gonna paste it here. So we know we're going to have this is going to be the same here, right? This create, search, and see. Create favorites, that's going to be the same here. Create tab bar, that's going to be different. So we want this UI tab bar appearance. We can go ahead and set this here in view did load. And so when you're using these dot appearances, this is going to handle every tab bar in the whole app. Our situation is, I'm not even going to call it unique, right? Most apps only have one tab bar controller. So we're going to put it in here in view did load. If for some weird reason, I can't even think of an example where you'd have multiple tab bar controllers in your app, then you would probably put that outside of here, but we're going to put that in here. And we do want to set our view controllers equal to those two here. And we're not doing it on the tab bar because we're doing it on self. And line up the equal signs here, get rid of this comment. And scroll down, we can probably get rid of this whole function now. Yep. And again, I just copy and pasted to bring all that over, so I could just do copying and pasting. Again, a lot of times in my refactoring, I like to rely on the copy paste. So again, what's going on here in our GF tab bar controller? We're creating a search navigation controller like we did, creating a favorites one like we did. We're setting our tint to system green, and we're initializing, or in view did load, we're setting our view controllers equal to create search and create favorites. Again, the same type of code is running. We're just moving it over into our GF tab bar controller. So now back in our scene delegate, we can, instead of create tab bar, we're just going to initialize a GF tab bar controller. And that initialization should happen, view did load will run, and all that should work. And you notice we got rid of all that code in our scene delegate. And again, in this app, we're not going to have extra stuff in our scene delegate, but in big time production apps, you likely will. So we want to clear that out of there. So let's run this and make sure this is working now. So we're just going to go to the 11 Pro, not the Max, run it. And here we are, our tab bar is still working. We got our green, you go to favorites, and you go to search. Okay, so everything's working still. We've got it refactored out, good to go. Okay, so let's stop this from running. And now let's actually run this on the iPhone SE. We're going to tackle this now. Maybe a couple spots in the app where we need to tweak it for the iPhone SE. Fortunately, the iPhone SE still exists, and it's a bane in our existence here, right? So this login screen looks okay, and then you tap that, do Command K to show the keyboard, and the keyboard covers it up. We have a couple options here, right? We could slide the whole view up, put it in a scroll view, slide the whole view up with the keyboard, and moving the view with the keyboard is kind of tricky. Like, I'm really surprised there's no default way that Apple just has, because if you Google this on Stack Overflow, you'll find like 5 different ways to do it, and some of them are janky. I don't know. It's always a pain. So unless I absolutely have to, right, there's no other way around it, I try to avoid moving the screen up with the keyboard. So what we're going to do is we're going to move the logo and the text field up a little bit only on the iPhone SE screen size. So you may be wondering, how do we do that just for the iPhone SE screen size? Well, of course, in auto layout, we have size classes like compact, regular, or regular, like the iPad. However, that doesn't do the whole job because like the normal iPhone 8 and 6 are the same size class as the iPhone 5. So the way I always describe this is auto layout size classes, that'll get you like 90-95% of the way there. However, that extra little bit to really dial your app in to look great on all screen sizes, you need to do something more granular and more precise. And we're going to introduce something into our constants file that helps me do that. So let's put these side by side here, move this over. And now let's get rid of or stop our simulator from running. Now in our constants file, so utilities, constants, I'm going to copy and paste this in because this is a lot of text. But this is something that I have used for since 2015. So for almost 5 years now. I got to import UI kit, import UI kit. And there may be other ways to do this. Like I said, I've been using this for like 5 years, so it wouldn't surprise me if something new's come along. But it's worked for me. It's trusty, so I'm going to show you this way. And I forgot my screen size enum here, so let's paste that in here. Again, I don't want to type this out. It's a lot of code, but I'll explain it. Basically, this enum here is getting the screen size. When I call screen size.width, I'm getting the width or height of the actual screen. And then here in device types, we're basically getting is iPhone SE. We're basically checking if the screen size max length is 568. And here iPhone 8 standard 667, iPhone 8 zoomed 667. And so the reason I have iPhone 8 standard and iPhone 8 zoomed is basically the iPhone 8 screen size. If it is in zoom mode, it basically turns it into an iPhone SE. So anyway, I basically am discerning between all the different phone sizes, and we have the iPad here. And then also I have a func to check if it's the iPhone X aspect ratio, because if you didn't know, the old iPhone SE, iPhone 6, 7, and 8, like the ones that still have the top and bottom bezels, those are aspect ratio of 16:9. However, the iPhone X aspect ratio is not quite 2:1, but almost 2:1. So it's a different aspect ratio. So I have a func here to check for that aspect ratio should I need that. But essentially, we're just using the total height of the screen size to determine what phone it is. And again, where I got these numbers, if you go back to Safari here, the ultimate guide to iPhone screen resolutions, you can see here, right? Like the iPhone SE here is 568 points tall. You see the 6, 7, and 8, 667. The 6 Plus, 7, 8 Plus, 8 Plus, 736, right? So you can see where I got these points from. And again, the reason or how I use these is to get very, very granular with my UI. So for example, in our iPhone SE, we're going to check is iPhone SE or is iPhone 8 zoomed? Because again, if you're out there with an iPhone 6, 7, or 8, put it in zoom mode and that will turn into an iPhone SE. And likewise, the iPhone 8 Plus, like the bigger, older phones, you put that in zoomed, that basically turns it into a regular iPhone 8. So zoom mode is a big deal that you have to handle. And again, I'd be very curious if you know better ways to get the exact screen size. Let me know, leave it in the comments. Again, I've been using this for like 4 or 5 years now, so wouldn't surprise me if there's a better way, but hey, it's been working. I've been using it in every project. I'm sticking with it. So if we go to our screens and go back to our search VC, here we need to get access to the top constraint of the logo image view. So let's go up and create a variable so we have access to it. Where are we going to put it here? Let's put it above the computed property here. So we can do var logo image view top constraint. And that is going to be of type NS layout constraint. And here we're going to set that where we're configuring the logo image view here. And here we can create that, say logo image view, top constraint. It's going to be equal to logo image view dot top anchor, very similar to what we've been doing here, dot constraint. It's going to be equal to, and then view dot safe area. Again, this is the same thing we did here. Dot constant is going to be, well, let's create our constant here because it's going to be different based on what we're doing here. So we can do let top constraint constant equal, and then here's where we can use what we did in our constants file. Device types dot is iPhone SE or device types dot is iPhone 8 zoomed, because remember that's the same thing. And we're going to use a ternary operator here. So if that is true, we want our constant to be let's try 20. And if it's false, we want it to be 80 because that's what we used down here for our actual constant. So here for our constant, when we create our constraint here, we can do top constraint constant, right? Because that's either going to be 20 or 80 based on if it's iPhone SE or iPhone 8 zoomed. And like I said, I try to minimize the use of tweaking things, for specific devices. And I try to let auto layout and size classes do most of the work because, if Apple changes things, you're going to be fine. When you're hard coding things like this, if Apple were to drastically change something with their UI, like introducing a notch or something, you're gonna have to go through and update all this. So again, I use this sparingly, but like I said in the beginning, this is good for like that last 5% of tweaks that you really have to dial it in. You don't want to rely on this too much. Oh, and we got an error here. Oh, I forgot to do .top anchor. So we forgot to do there. So again, it's the same code as right here. And what do we got here? Oh yeah, this has to be, I have to let this know that this is a CG float. CG float. So again, what we're doing, we're creating this top constraint constant. It's of type CG float. Based on if it's an iPhone SE or an iPhone 8 zoomed, we're going to make it 20. If not, we're going to use it 80. And then here we've created our top constraint with the anchor, similar to what we did here. So we're actually going to have to take this out of this array because we're doing it in here. And we do logo, we do top constraint dot is active equals true. So now if we run it on the iPhone SE, we should see the top logo up high, and it should be high enough. I mean, I haven't really tested it, to be honest with you. Yes, it is high enough to not be hidden right there, and we can dismiss that. Now, if we run this side by side here with the iPhone 11 Pro, now we should get the constraint of 80 because it is not an iPhone SE or zoomed. And let's go ahead and run this side by side so we can see. Yep, so you can see side by side, again, do Command K so you can see the thing. So side by side, you can see the GitHub logo is moved up, but being that close to the top actually looks fine on the iPhone SE because it's such a smaller screen size. Whereas here on our bigger screen size, we want it a little lower. So using the device types enum that we have in our constants file, again, you can use this to really dial in and tweak your UI. I want to stress though, don't rely on it too much. Only use it for that last 5% of tweaking like we did here. All right, so let's stop running this and moving on. Right here on line 59, we do not need to force unwrap this UI image. That is a bad habit that I have. That was my mistake. I apologize. So you do not need to force unwrap your UI images. Now, while we're here, let's go ahead and create an images. I'm going to copy this, and we're going to go ahead and in our constants create an images enum here for our constants images. And here we're going to do static let gh logo equal, and we're going to do UI image named, and we're going to paste in that. So now we're going to be able to call images.gh logo for, and we're going to do this with like all our images. And again, this is more just polish, refinement, making your code base nice, clean, easy to use. So again, back to the search VC. So now instead of initializing the image there, we can do images.gh logo. And you'll be able to see once we add more, right? If we do images dot, right? We get the GH logo, cool, but eventually any images we're going to put in there, we're going to get it all there for the autocomplete, which really comes in handy if you're using the same image in multiple places throughout your app. And now let's talk about our text field, but I want to do something real quick. Here in our, before we're dismissing our text field or tap gesture, we don't need to put self there. Do Command B, that will work. Sometimes it's a bad habit using self, like it's left over from Objective-C because in Objective-C, you had to use self like everywhere. Well, in Swift, it's not required unless it is required. Meaning in like a closure, right? In Xcode will tell you like, hey, self is required here. Again, I'm all about kind of cleaner code. So if I don't have to have self there, I don't like to put it there. I feel like it's cluttering it up for no reason. And then now let's go to our text field to like optimize that. So in our custom views, go to text fields. We can go to GF text field and we can add one cool line of code that's going to put up this little X that'll clear off our text field. And that is something, we'll put it above our placeholder because I like the red string to be at the bottom just visually, but it's called clear button mode. And we can do dot while editing. So what this little line of code does, and I appreciate, I can't remember who did it, but somebody in the comments pointing this out and I'm adding it here in the video. But if we run this now on our iPhone 11 Pro, you'll see in our text field, we're going to get a cool little X when we're editing. So you tap in there, start typing something and see this little X right here. So now it's a quick way to clear your text field. So I like that little addition. And again, you just get that by adding this one little line of code to our custom text field. So nice little optimization. So for this next one, I actually got to run it on my device because you can't do this navigation type on the simulator, or at least I don't know how to do it. But if you go to any user, put in my username here, and if you start sliding back, we fixed the bug with this before, but now you see the button over the keyboard, right? Like it just looks weird. So we want to dismiss the keyboard when we go to the next screen so we don't get this weird overlapping UI. And again, this is like nitpicky bug fixing type stuff. So let's go ahead and fix that. And we do that here in the search VC when we go to when we push the follower list VC. There's a couple ways we can do this. We can do username text field dot resign first responder. That will get rid of it. We could also just call view dot did end editing or view dot end editing true. I'm gonna be specific here and do username text field dot resign first responder. And we may want to clear out the text field because when you hit back, the name is still in your text field. So in view will appear here, we can do username text field dot text equals blank. That way, every time this new view appears, we're gonna have a blank text field, which is the behavior we want. So let's test this out here. And I'm gonna have to run this on my phone again because you can't do that swiping navigation on the simulator. So we can do SALLEN 0400, hit go. So now when we swipe back, our keyboard is gone, so we no longer have that bug. And then if I hit back on the search, our username text field is empty, so the user can search for a new name. Good to go. Now next we want to optimize back on our push follower list VC. So here we're doing this, and this was a discussion in the comments as well, right? We're just creating a follower list VC, and then we have to set the username and title here before we pass that. I mean, that's fine. After a discussion in the comments, I actually like the idea, and we started doing this later in the course, of creating a custom initializer on the follower list VC that takes in a username, right? Because our follower list VC doesn't work without a user, right? So we want to kind of, make it so you have to initialize this with a user. So here in our follower list VC, after our variables, we're going to create an initializer. So init, and we want to pass in a user, which is of type user. And then we have to call the super. So super.init. And again, nib is nil, bundle is nil. So we've done this before in other view controllers later in the course. We're just kind of coming back and doing this again. So here in the init, now we can set user, or we'll do self.user, right? Because we have to let it know it's the self, equals user. So basically we're setting the user we passed in equal, let me get rid of this error. This is our storyboard initializer that we've been using a lot here. Oh, whoopsie, value of follower list VC has no member user. My bad. We're passing the user name here. So this is of type string. My apologies here. So self.username. I got confused with other view controllers where we're passing through the user, not the user name. So we do that, and then we can also do title equals user name that we pass in, and we can line up the equal signs. So now when we initialize this, we're setting our username to username and also setting the title. So now we can go back to our search VC, and this makes more sense, right? You're setting all this stuff in the actual follower list VC. So back in the search VC, we can get rid of these two lines of code, clean this up a little bit, and here we'll do equals follower list VC, except now when we do the initializer, we get the username one, right? Our normal initializer is gone. So we're kind of forcing the user of the code to, the only way you can create a follower list VC is if you have a username, which is what we want, right? Because it doesn't work without a username. So now we want to pass in username text field dot text. That's what we're going to pass there. And the username text field has to be force unwrap there. So now, like I said, we're initializing this follower list V, and it's forced to pass in a username text field.text, which again is going to be the username. So you can see we got an error over here on the left. Click on that. That's because we are initializing another follower list VC here that we need to now use our new initializer on. And this is, by the way, this is on the our favorites list VC, right? So this is the table view on the favorite screen that you tap on the cell and it pulls up the followers. So now we need to initialize this with a username, which is, not coder, username, which is favorite.login. All right, so just like we're doing here, and we already know we're setting the title in the follower list VC as well. So we can clean that up, do a Command B. All of our errors should be gone, build succeeded, no warnings. All right, we're good to go. So again, we updated this in the favorites list VC as well, because it's the other place where we're using our follower list VC. So you can see this code got cleaned up a little bit, and we moved that into our follower list VC initializer, which made more sense to me. So I like that optimization as well. So let's test this real quick before we go. You always want to test your refactoring, right? Because a lot of times you're moving code around, you're changing things. Very often when you're refactoring, you could break it. So let's test it here. So let's do SALLEN 0400. Again, we should be initializing our follower list VC with that username. Good to go. Everything still works. Let's check our favorites VC to make sure that worked, because we changed code there as well. Tap on Caleb. We get Caleb's followers. Everything's good to go. So that wraps up the optimization for our search VC. And again, we're going to go like screen by screen, section by section of the app to start optimizing this. This was just part one. We'll see you in the future optimization videos.